make sure my volume is on the other one. I think I messed that one up, speaking wise. But I think we're set now. The idea is this. A lot of people are questioning, are we in the last days? Is the beast going to happen? And of course, a lot of people have watched Kirk Cameron and the whole Left Behind series and everything else. And the proposition, which is held by a lot of people and a lot of churches, is the idea that the second coming is going to happen right away, soon. It could, come tomorrow. But it's always about the rapture. And they believe that the rapture can happen any moment, which means, of course, is that we're going to be walking along, and all of a sudden, like two men walking in a field, one's taken and one's left. Current frame rate is too low. Please set to 15. I can't do it. We'll see what happens with the frame rate here. One's taken and one's left behind. And everybody goes, well, that's the rapture. That's the rapture. So we're going to talk all about that stuff tonight. And the basis of this, and for the next 45 minutes, is found in the Olivet Discourse. And it is starting with Matthew 24. I'm wondering if I'll be able to share my screen. Who knows if I will. Doesn't look like it might. I don't think. Nope. Probably won't share the screen. Anyway, so what is it? What the idea is that I'll be probably skipping to it so I can look at it and read it correctly so I don't screw anything up. But the Olivet Discourse is, of course, Matthew 24. It also is recorded in Mark 13 and then in Luke 21. And it's in those passages in through there that it talks about the disciples with Jesus. And he had, in the chapter before, I like a Matthew 23. But they were coming out of the temple one day, and the disciples said to him, hey, look at how gorgeous these buildings are. Now, these buildings were very gorgeous because Herod had built them. He had started at about 25 BCE, and I don't know if it was done probably finished up at about 7 AD or Common Era CE is when he completed it. When he built this thing, it's just huge. The blocks that they used and they cut. But they also, what they did was lined it with gold. So on the outside of it, there was a lot of gold, and especially on the inside. And it got in between the cracks. So this building was just, wow. It was an incredible thing to see from a distance, the light reflecting it off of that, and just something else to behold. Well, so they're walking out, and he says, hey, see how gorgeous this temple is? The disciples said to Jesus, and Jesus said, there's a day coming where, and I'm paraphrasing it, or maybe I can flip over and read it. That'd probably be easier so I don't mess it up, right? You see all these, don't you? Truly I say to you, there will not be left here one stone upon another that will not be thrown down. Now, I read from the English Standard Version, and the reason I do, because it sticks more to the Greek literalness in the language. It doesn't try to influence, add to, or anything else, but it strictly deals with the literal Greek into English, kind of a translation. It doesn't mince words. So there'll not be left here one stone upon another that will not be thrown down. Now, what's interesting is, I've done some saying that the Roman Empire, when they came and they laid siege to things, there was one city, Philippi, I don't think it was Caesarea, it was another city named Philippi, but they had actually had like this little island fortress the city lived off, and it was only about a couple of yards off the coast, meaning this island was like, 2 football fields away from the shore. And what the Romans did, and this was a common tactic for them, is that they started, when they came to attack this city, when they wanted to take it over, what they did was they started pouring rock into the water and filling it up. And they made it wide enough so that their army could walk through. And what they did was they built this big wall in front of them so that arrows, rocks, or anything couldn't. So every day, they would push this thing forward. They would build up the road behind it and push it up and push it up and push it up until eventually they got right up to the wall. Now, the others, this thing was so big that, at one point they set it on fire. And so the Romans, built a second one and put it up there. But unto the people inside, they had dug a tunnel underneath. And so in the middle of the night, this hole opened up, they poured out, and when they came in and destroyed this city, every stone that was on that wall was taken down. There was no stones left one upon the other. And they threw them into the ocean. And the whole point of the Roman army was so that you cannot rebuild it again against us. And it would take you years to undo what we're doing. And that was a very common tactic. For instance, at Masada, where over 600 Jews were on top of that mountaintop. Well, they couldn't get up this little road the only way up there because two people possibly could fit. And so, of course, anybody would come up, they would kill him instantly. So what they did was, if you look at the picture line, they built a ramp up, and they did the same thing. They built a ramp all the way up to the top. And then when they got done with it, they tore down every stone. And very common for them to do. So this is a common tactic of the Romans that we're talking about. So now, after they went to the Mount of Olives, which is, a couple hundred feet more or so. It's just a little bit of valley that lies in between the Jerusalem temple and the Mount of Olives, if you see it on a map. And so they come into the Mount of Olives, and they asked him, Lord, tell us, when will these things be, and what will be the sign of your coming and at the end of the age? And that word there is parousia. Now, Jesus answered, said, see that no one leads you astray. And he goes through this whole list, and he talks about even Daniel's prophecy, when you see abomination, desolation spoken by the prophet Daniel. He goes through this whole list and everything else. And then finally, when you come down to 30, then will appear the heaven, the sign of the Son of Man, and then all the tribes of the earth will mourn, and they will see the Son of Man coming in clouds of heaven with power and great glory. Now, you go down just a few more verses, and it says, truly I say to you, this generation will not pass away until all these things take place. So now we have a problem. It says they will see the Son of Man coming in the clouds. That's the second coming. That is the way it was understood from Augustine all the way forward, even to this day. Anybody who tells you about the second coming will automatically go to Matthew 24, and they will read that quote and say, see, the Son of Man is going to be coming on the clouds with power and great glory. That's talking about it. And, of course, then what that means is that there has to be a temple, and that temple has to be torn down. So that's why everybody's looking to Jerusalem saying, hey, we're waiting for this temple to be rebuilt, because we know when it's rebuilt, then that means we know that this is the last days, and it's going to get torn down. It's all part of the scenario. And that is simply untrue. Now, let me explain a couple things. First of all, parousia is a word that used by Paul in the New Testament, does talk about a second coming, and it's also used for when Stephanus or Silenus or somebody else is coming to a city who have been absent. Now they're coming and they're being present. So they were absent, now they're present. So that is a coming, and that's how that word is understood. And it's used by Paul as a noun to talk about an event. Okay, Michael, I see you, dude. I'm looking at the notes now. I'm going back over to the other screen so I can see things. Now, so this is talking then about, is it the second coming? And so here's what we got to do. When we look at this, the first one, then will appear the heaven, Son of Man, and then all the tribes of the earth will mourn. That's a quotation from Daniel 12, and it's talking about the second coming. But that's not the way it's used in this verse. The second part of that verse, they will see the Son of Man come in clouds with power and great glory, is a direct quote from Daniel 7, verse 13. I saw the night visions, and behold, with the clouds of heaven, there come one like a Son of Man, and he came to the Ancient of Days, and was presented before him. And to him he was given a dominion, a glory, and a kingdom, and all people, nations, and languages should serve him. So his dominion is an everlasting dominion, which shall not pass away, and his kingdom one shall not be destroyed. So this is a picture of him going to heaven. This is a picture of his ascension, of coming to the Ancient of Days and being presented before him. This passage has nothing to do with the second coming. But what is it talking about? Because the Son of Man will come to the Father, will be ascended. He will sit down at the right hand, and what happens is he's given the kingdom. He's given the honor and the glory. And 1 Corinthians says, that he will sit and rule on the throne until he makes all his enemies a footstool. Until, of course, physical death is destroyed. The last enemy. And so now, this isn't talking about it. So anytime that you look through the Gospels and you see that phrase, it says, Son of Man coming in his kingdom. Or there's another passages that talk about there's some standing here who will not taste death until they see the Son of Man coming in his kingdom. Well, coming in his kingdom is not here on earth. It's not coming down. It's him going up. And they saw in that generation, they saw him go into heaven. And then when he went into heaven, that was him sitting down at the right hand of God. If we go to, the computer's a little slow sometimes, but I'm going to go to John 5 and I want to read this to you. Let's see. It is down in verse 25. Truly I say to you, an hour is coming, and now here, when the dead will hear his voice of the Son of God, and those who will hear will live. For as the Father has life in himself, so is he granted the Son to have life in himself. And he has given him authority to execute judgment, because he is the Son of Man that ascended to the throne in Daniel 7 and 13, 14. Do not marvel at this, for an hour is coming when all who are in the tombs will hear his voice and come out, and those who have done good to a resurrection of life, and those who have done evil to the resurrection of the judgment. So we know what's going to happen. Now, in Matthew, switching over again, Matthew 26, this was standing before Caiaphas. Caiaphas asked me, are you the Son of God or not? Are you? Tell us, are you really him? And eventually, what had happened? The high priest said, I adjure you by the living God, tell us if you are the Christ, the Son of God. Now he's invoked God's name, so he's got to answer. Jesus said to him, you have said so. You've said the truth, basically, is what he's saying. Yeah, I am the Son of God. You said it. But I tell you, from now on, after this point, basically is what it's saying, you will see the Son of Man seated at the right hand of power. Well, how do we know he's at the right hand of power? Because he will ascend into heaven after they kill him. So you will see the Son of Man seated at the right hand of power and coming on clouds of heaven. He can't sit and come at the same time. So he's talking about that phrase there, coming on clouds, always means about judgment. So you will see the judgment come on Jerusalem because I, the Son of Man, from Daniel 7, will be sitting at the right hand, and I will be the one given the power in the kingdom. And the high priest tore his robes and said, he utters blasphemy. Why? Because he understood this was a second coming prophecy, and he was perfectly aware of the implication of what he said. I bet you two to this video is a little bit breaking up a little bit and going slow, but I will eventually deal with that when I figure out how to work it. Now, so that is true. It's not talking about the Olivet, it's not talking about a second coming. Then you cannot put, hi Leslie, you cannot put the second coming and all of the Olivet and everything about that into some future scenario. We can't do that. That's the first thing to get straight. It's not talking about a temple being rebuilt and having destroyed. And that's the position that we call dispensationalism. And that's what they teach. And that the rapture happens first, then the idea is that the second coming, Jesus comes partly out of heaven as he's coming through there, and then everybody gets raised, and it's a secret rapture. Nobody ever sees anything of, but all of a sudden all the graves emptied up, and everybody who is alive, is automatically caught up, and they're changed in a second, and they're into heaven, and those poor people that were left behind are stuck having to deal with everything that goes on. If you go to Thessalonians, and this is the primary verse that it's taught in. 1 Thessalonians chapter 4. It says here near at the end of the chapter, but we do not want you to be uninformed, brothers, about those who are asleep or fallen asleep, meaning they're dead, that you may not grieve as others do who have no hope. In other words, the world out there agreed because they don't have any expectation to ever see that loved one again. But we do. We have a hope. For since we believe that Jesus died and rose again, even so, through Jesus, God will bring with him those who have physically died. God will bring with who? Jesus, those who have physically died. For this we declare to you by a word from the Lord, that we who are alive, who are left until the coming of the Lord, so that means us that are alive, when he comes, and if we're alive, we will not go before those who have fallen asleep. For the Lord himself will descend from out of heaven. Remember, Acts 1 says that you saw Jesus go up, you will see him come back. Zechariah 14, it says in verse 3, The Lord will stand. His feet will stand on the Mount of Olives. So when he comes back, it will be to the Mount of Olives in front of everybody. He will descend from heaven with the cry of a command, with the voice of an angel, and the sound of the trumpet of God, and the dead in Christ will rise first. Do you see that? He will bring with him those who have physically died. Then they will be raised. And we who are alive, in verse 17, who are left, will be caught up together with him in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air. Now that word meet is the Greek word antithesis, and it means, for example, here's the best scenario. Think about this. Remember on the day of Palm Sunday, in that narrative, what happened? Jesus was coming into Jerusalem, and what happened? He sent the disciples ahead. He got the donkey, and they asked, what do you need the donkey for? And he was the one who replied and said, the master has need of him. He's coming. Well, word spread that Jesus was coming into Jerusalem, and it had been over pretty much a year since he had been there. So what happens is the whole city empties out. They meet him get that? They meet him. And then they escort him into the city. Now, this was very popular back in those days when the Roman army would be out and they'd be gone for a month or 6 months or whatever, how long they're gone. And when they were coming back to Rome, they would send runners ahead. And what happens is the people and the families would come out. And they would meet them on the road and walk into it. And it would be like this big old huge parade. As they came in marching, they would have in the front of the army the slaves that they had captured. They would have all the booty that they had collected and everything. And they would go into the... I'm going to do this real quick. They would go into the city. This is the picture that's being presented. Now, if you guys have any questions, feel free to write them. I'll be able to respond to them and see it. So, yeah, go ahead. And then, all right, so this is the picture of antithesis, is what it's talking about. So you can't divide it up. Revelation 19, it talks about when Jesus comes back, that he comes to the cloud, he brings his army with him, and the army is, of course, is the saints. We're the ones who are transformed and changed. We come back with him to this earth as part of his army, and the army of the beast and all that is destroyed and defeated. So, what we take away from all of this is that we do not be looking for the temple to be rebuilt, or to be destroyed in the book of Revelations, or look for that kind of a thing to happen in the future. The rapture cannot happen. It's all one event. Jesus comes out of heaven. We are changed. The dead are raised. Both groups meet him in the sky, in the air. We become part of his armies, and he comes back. And if you really wanted to get technical, here's the interesting thing, and I can do it because I got a little bit of time left. Revelations 19. Now, people say, oh, Revelations are very confusing and all of this, but see, it's using apocalyptic language to describe literal and real things. For example, I saw the heavens open in verse 11. Behold, a white horse. The one sitting on it is called Faithful and True, and in righteousness he judges and makes war. All right, so Jesus didn't leave in Acts 1 on a horse, but here he's coming back. Well, this is imagery that's being presented. Back in those days, if a king came into a city and he's riding a donkey, that means he comes in peace. If he comes riding a horse, the idea was that he was coming to make war and that he was being a judge and going to make war. So this is something that's presented all the way through. You can go all the way back to Esther, when Mordecai was to be presented to the people. They put him on a donkey. They didn't put him on a horse. They put him on a donkey. And he was led around because he was not coming here for war. All right, but you go through here on that Revelations a little bit more. It says he is clothed and dipped in blood, and the name by which he is called is the Word of God. And the armies of heaven, arrayed in fine linen, white and pure, were following him on white horses. And so it continues on. Go on down to verse 19. And I saw the beast and the kings of the earth with their armies together to make war against him who is sitting on the horse and against his army. It doesn't say it's against Jerusalem. It says against his army. If you go back to Revelation 6, where does this battle take place? Where do we all talk about, the Battle of Armageddon? Even in Left Behind, it was the Battle of Armageddon. Well, the Valley of Megiddo is where it happens. And the Valley of Megiddo is part of the Valley of Jezreel. And, okay, this is a side note. I love that. Do you know why it's called the Valley of Jezreel? This is where Jezebel, back in the Old Testament, she lived there. Remember? And her husband died, Ahab, and she was up there doing her thing and manipulating and just wicked, wicked, wicked person. And so when the new king comes in, they look up there. All right, all you guys up there in the window with Jezebel, if you're for me, throw her out the window. They grabbed her, they threw her out the window, and she died because that's how high up it was. And then they go back, well, we probably should bury her. But the prophet said that you would be scattered across all the land, once you're dead. Well, sure enough, the wild dogs had gotten to her body and tore her up, and she was literally scattered all across the land. Now, this is called the Valley of Jezreel. This valley where this army is going to be gathered and the battle takes place is in that valley. It's 107 miles away from Jerusalem. Jerusalem's not being sieged by this army. They're 107 miles away. So you get the idea that's being presented here is that what happens, the feed keeps pausing, so I have trouble understanding the message. Yeah, maybe I can fix that real quick. It has to do with the camera. Let me see if I can change the settings on that. No, I can't. I can't. Not yet. I'll have to figure that out later. Sorry about that, guys. Yeah, can't do anything. All right, now I got to go back and see if I can. Okay, there. Back to the original screen so I can see your time. Sorry, Stephen. And wow, it's going to be on Spreaker, as I said. It should be no problem doing that, and that might be what the cause is that I'm recording this at the same time on a different thing. So maybe next time I do this, I will keep that off, and we'll leave it at that. Maybe nope, I'm not gonna. Okay, that keeps going in. I think that's what's wrong. What's going on? Who else is it? Yeah, Michael's saying the same thing. All right, I think I'm going to do it. I'm going to stop the broadcast.